Heinrich Himmler wasn't a loud dictator shouting from balconies. He looked more like a schoolteacher than the head of the SS. A quiet man with round glasses who drank warm milk, raised chickens, and liked books about herbs. But what did his days really look like? Did he spend his mornings thinking about his health while signing death orders in the afternoon? Did the man who liked gardening also make time to visit camps? And how could someone so caught up in small routines be in charge of killing millions? So what did Heinrich Himmler actually do all day? Heinrich Himmler's day began with a strict sense of order. He woke around 7 a.m. not as a soldier ready for battle, but as a weak man tied to his habits. He had stomach problems, allergies, and poor eyesight, things that made him seem more like a worried schoolteacher than the man behind mass killings. Yet from this fragile figure came some of the deadliest orders in modern times. His mornings showed many strange contrasts. He avoided meat and ate porridge, fruit, and warm milk for breakfast. He hated smoking so much that SS men were not allowed to do it near him. And while he saw himself as the protector of a new Aryan race, he trusted herbal teas and natural cures, believing they kept him clean and strong. His bedroom and study were full of books on old stories, herbs, and ancient German symbols. Before starting work, he might read a medieval tale or a farmer's calendar, feeding his strange interest in myths and blood purity. In these quiet hours, he looked less like a fighter and more like a monk of his own dark order. But the peace was false. Once he put on his SS uniform and entered his office, he was faced with papers filled with train schedules, prisoner counts, and medical reports. His calm mornings always ended with the business of death. Himmler's breakfast table was as neat as the rest of his life. A cup of herbal tea, a slice of bread with honey, maybe some cottage cheese or boiled potatoes. He avoided meat and alcohol, believing that staying away from them kept his mind sharp and his body clean. He even told others that living simply at the table showed true discipline of the soul. But while he drank his warm milk, the desk beside him filled with orders for shootings and deportations. On some mornings, he read reports from the Einsatzgruppen units describing thousands of executions in Eastern Europe, written in such plain, office-like words they could almost be mistaken for accounting notes. To Himmler, these weren't crimes, but cleansing for the Reich's future. One of his strange habits was his hatred of cigarette smoke. He believed smoking weakened the German people, so he banned SS men from smoking in uniform and told women not to marry smokers. Yet, just outside his window, the smoke rising into the sky was not from tobacco, but from crematoria, a bitter truth he ignored. He often ate in silence, speaking little, already thinking about schedules, orders, and the meetings ahead. His food was plain, almost like that of a monk, but his power was far from simple. The contrast was sharp. Here was a man who worried over the purity of milk while planning the murder of millions. His breakfast ended not with prayer, but with another page of death. By mid-morning, Himmler was deep in paperwork. His office, clean and quiet, looked less like that of a dictator and more like that of a clerk. He worked best in silence, pen in hand, reading page after page of typed reports. These were not Hitler's loud speeches or generals' war maps, they were numbers, lists, and schedules. But behind those numbers were real people, disappearing by the thousands. One folder might list train times, how many cattle cars left Warsaw, how many arrivals reached Auschwitz. Another folder held notes on forced sterilization experiments, written up as if they were science projects. Himmler signed them quickly, almost without thought. His danger did not come from anger or shouting, but from the cold way he treated mass killing as nothing more than routine work. He often marked the margins with small notes. Historians have found places where he underlined numbers, asked about efficiency, or suggested expanding a camp. His need for order showed even here every killing had to be neat, counted, and filed away. On some days, his aides brought him even darker reports. Firing squads, prisoners shot while trying to escape, resistance fighters tortured. Himmler read them without pause, as if they were farm reports, part of his daily duty. This was his morning's work, not battles, not speeches, but endless sheets of death turned into numbers. When he set down his pen, it was not only ink on the page, it was lives, erased with his signature. Every so often, Himmler left his desk to see the results of his orders for himself. A motorcade carried him through guarded gates, where SS officers stood stiffly in line, waiting for the Reichsführer's inspection. He walked slowly in polished boots, his round glasses shining, his face calm and distant. Unlike Hitler, who stayed away from the camps, Himmler insisted on visiting. He wanted to see the system of death with his own eyes. At Auschwitz, people remembered him watching executions without showing emotion. Prisoners were hanged in front of him, guards shot people at close range. Himmler stayed steady, even curious. Once in Minsk, he turned pale at a mass shooting. But instead of stopping it, he ordered gas chambers to make the killings more efficient and less stressful for the SS. Even his moments of weakness led to new ways of cruelty. Sometimes he toured the barracks, asking camp leaders about rations, work numbers, or how sick prisoners were handled. To him, it was just management. On certain days, he even brought his family along, as if a camp visit could sit next to a family trip. What survivors noticed most was his coldness. He rarely shouted, rarely lost control. He treated extermination like farming, as if people were crops or animals to be managed. To Himmler, the camps were not horror, they were order at work, and when he left, the guards knew the Reichsführer had seen it all and he approved. Himmler liked to think of himself as a supporter of science, but the science he pushed was built on blood. Through his orders, camps became labs where prisoners were used as test subjects. He approved freezing experiments to see how long a person could survive in icy water. He ordered research into sterilization, looking for ways to stop whole groups of people from having children. Diseases like malaria, typhus, and tuberculosis were injected into healthy prisoners, all under the claim of medical progress. Doctors like Sigmund Rascher wrote directly to Himmler with detailed reports. Himmler not only read them, but often wrote back, asking questions and telling them to continue. He wasn't bothered by the cruelty, he wanted results. When Rascher drowned men in ice water at Dachau until their hearts stopped, Himmler asked whether warming methods could save German pilots who crashed into the sea. He turned medicine into a weapon. He praised doctors like Karl Klauberg, who tested chemical sterilization on women in Ravensbrück, calling them pioneers of racial hygiene. To Himmler, the victims weren't people, they were material, tools for the Reich's future. In his eyes, these crimes were not murders, but studies serving a higher purpose. He blurred the line between doctor and killer, treating death as data. For Himmler, knowledge mattered only if it served his beliefs. For the prisoners, it meant torture masked as science. By early afternoon, Himmler returned to the work that defined him most: paperwork. His office was filled with maps, train schedules, and typed notes. Where others might see boring details, he saw the structure of power. Sitting calmly at his desk, he went over deportations, work quotas, and extermination schedules as if they were parts of a puzzle only he could solve. Railways were often the main topic. How many trains could be taken from military use to send Jews east? Could more cattle cars be packed without slowing deliveries? These were the questions Himmler asked again and again. A man too weak for the front line had found his war in files and meetings. Afternoons also brought talks about Zyklon B shipments, the poison that turned gas chambers into tools of mass murder. Reports from Auschwitz and Majdanek came to him often, describing how capacity had gone up, how processing was now faster. Himmler read them not as human tragedy, but as signs of better efficiency. What made him most dangerous was not anger or wild speeches, but his calmness. He could discuss extermination in the same tone another man might use to talk about a harvest. When meetings ended, he left behind notes, orders, and signatures that kept the killing system running smoothly. For Himmler, an afternoon at the office was not boring routine, it was the quiet heartbeat of a machine built for death. As daylight faded, Himmler often slipped into another world, one of symbols, rituals, and old myths. To most people, he looked like a stiff clerk in glasses. But in private, he was drawn to the occult, believing the SS was more than an army. To him, it was a knightly order meant to shape history. At the center of this dream was Wewelsburg Castle, which he turned into a kind of spiritual base. Its rooms were filled with runes and swastikas, and a crypt was set up for ceremonies modeled on medieval knights. Himmler saw himself as a grand master, and the SS as warrior monks on a holy mission. He even ordered studies of his officers' family trees, trying to trace their Aryan blood back for generations, as if ancestry itself carried magic. He filled shelves with books on astrology, herbs, and Germanic legends. To him, ancient tribal sagas were not just stories, but plans for the Reich's future. He even imagined the SS creating a new faith, one that could replace Christianity with rituals tied to blood and soil. One of his strangest ideas was the hunt for relics. He sent teams to Tibet, the Caucasus, even Spain, searching for objects that could prove Aryan greatness. He thought archaeology might back up Nazi myths. This was not harmless fantasy. His obsession with purity and mystical destiny fed straight into real policies of mass murder. Behind the tidy paperwork was a man who believed killing itself was part of a sacred mission. As the day came to a close, Himmler often moved from signing death orders to the comfort of writing letters. His private correspondence showed the strange split in his life. On the same day he approved deportations, he wrote tender notes to his wife, Margarete, and affectionate letters to his mistress, Hedwig Potthast. To Margarete, he wrote about family life, health cures, and even gardening. He sometimes sent pressed flowers, as if the man running Europe's largest killing system was just a husband worried about roses. To Hedwig, with whom he had 2 children, his words grew softer still. He used pet names, shared warmth, and showed a private kind of love proof he could care deeply, but only within his own small circle. The contrast was extreme. In the morning, he might approve freezing experiments that killed prisoners. In the evening, he told Margarete how chamomile tea calmed his stomach. He once signed an order sending thousands to Auschwitz, then minutes later wrote cheerfully about raising chickens. Himmler took pride in keeping these worlds apart. To him, there was no conflict. The murder of millions and the raising of his daughter Gudrun were simply different duties. His pen worked just as steadily in both roles, one for killing, one for family affection. It was this smooth blend of cruelty and domestic life that made him so chilling. He could move from genocide to gentle words without pause. Dinner in Himmler's world was not rich or fancy. He preferred plain meals, vegetables, potatoes, milk, bread. Meat was rare and alcohol even rarer. He often spoke about healthy living, saying the SS should show discipline in both body and spirit. But the talk around his table was far from pure. Meals with his close circle often became planning sessions for the final solution. Between bites of boiled potatoes, Himmler spoke calmly about deportation quotas, building progress at extermination camps, or the need for more guards. His quiet voice turned horror into routine business. Those at the table knew not to question him. His calm authority carried more weight than Hitler's fiery speeches. People noticed he disliked greed at the table. He wanted his officers lean, clean, and strict in their habits, yet he had no problem with them running mass killings. His crusade against smoking looked absurd when compared with his approval of crematoria smoke rising across occupied Europe. At times, he dined with officers just back from the East. Over soup and bread, they reported shootings and gassings, while Himmler listened closely, asking about efficiency and morale. Dinner was not a break from his work, it was simply a part of it. The mood was cold and distant. Food filled the body, but talk at the table fueled ideology. For Himmler, even dinner was a time to fine-tune the machinery of death served not on plates, but in the orders he gave his SS. At nightfall, Himmler settled into quiet routines that made him seem almost normal. He disliked staying up late and often went to bed by 10 p.m. His evenings were spent with books, Nordic sagas, folklore, or guides on herbal medicine. Sometimes he read reports from SS researchers on Germanic history, believing he was rebuilding a lost spiritual order. To him, the Reich was not just politics but destiny, shaped by myth and blood. Unlike Hitler, who paced and ranted into the night, Himmler was calm and steady in private. He might write in his diary, copy down herbal recipes, or plan changes for Wewelsburg Castle, the temple he imagined for the SS. His notes rarely mentioned the killing he directed during the day. It was as if he lived in two worlds, one of quiet family life, the other of mass death. He slept without trouble. There are no signs of nightmares, no hints of guilt. He thought of himself as a soldier doing his duty, even a protector of his people. When he closed his eyes, he did not see the dead. He saw only the dream of a pure nation. This is what made Himmler so chilling. His days were not wild or frenzied, but ruled by order and belief. He was not a madman screaming with rage. He was a man who thought murder was duty and genocide was destiny. At night, the Reichsfuhrer set aside his glasses, folded his hands, and went to sleep without remorse. So, what did Heinrich Himmler actually do all day? He rose early, obsessed over health and routine, and turned mass murder into paperwork. He toured camps, pushed medical experiments, and spoke of extermination as if it were ordinary office work. What do you think is more terrifying? A dictator who kills in anger, or a bureaucrat who kills with calm efficiency? Tell us in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more deep dives into history, and hit the bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next one.